really have a whole lot in mind. I think I'm going to start just by giving myself some random marks. And then I'm going to start going into those and figure out what they're going to turn into. I was doing this the other day, yesterday and the day prior, and the weird things that ensued were quite strange. Ended up with like a fox and a manta ray and maybe a little fish like from Finding Nemo. So lots of kind of pseudo interesting things, weird little products. This is based on an exercise that I used to do with my students that I think encourages a higher degree of creativity. And what I would do is I would take a Sharpie and make a whole bunch of random marks, kind of like this, but usually a little bit less orderly. And some of them would be organic shapes like this. Some would be circles. Some would be boxes and squares. Some would be lines like this. And then I would photocopy those. And I would give them to the kids, to the students. And their goal would be, given 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that, was to turn them into something. And that's kind of the idea here, is just I'm giving myself a whole bunch of predefined shapes that don't really have any order or any plan with them. And then from that, I'll just kind of see what happens. I'll see where things lead me. I find this kind of drawing relaxing, where you are removing as many potential thoughts as you can from the process. I think it's good to do relaxing forms of drawing and practice, because sometimes it can be very, very difficult to get into your artwork, to actually do things, to actually just keep moving forward. And so if you can create a manner of drawing, a manner of painting, composing, writing, whatever it might be, that allows you to simply get in there and mess around and play, you're usually going to be in a better spot, I think. So that's kind of what this is. This is just a way for me to get moving, get some things done. I was thinking about maybe I should warm up before I get in today. But this is kind of my warm-up. This is a form of drawing that allows me to just move and do things. And so there's a good chance that during this session that I'll be moving the camera or the sketchbook around at kind of weird angles. And, you know, that just might be what happens. So I don't really have a whole lot of idea about what's going to happen. I'll probably just kind of start tracing out lines here. There we go. It's a little bit more zoomed in. I'll probably just start by tracing out lines and then kind of see where things take me. It looked like it was going to start becoming spring here, and I know technically now that we are in spring, but we certainly woke up to a snowstorm again yesterday morning, and it was freezing cold this morning when I went outside. It's funny in Colorado how the seasons kind of flirt with each other for a while. When you're in the dead of summer, it's definitely summer. When you're in the dead of winter, it's definitely winter. But anything other than that, it's almost like they flirt back and forth. Now it's your turn to take the reins. Now it's your turn. And it's just this weird semi-symbiotic and, for us on the outside, a slightly cataclysmic way of functioning, because we just never know. I know there are places that people live where they have clothes that they put away for certain seasons, and they just don't, we don't get into them. They don't wear them in the seasons where they're not meant to be worn. And in Colorado, pretty much I wear jeans, a t-shirt, and a hoodie, and that's what I wear. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. And there's a lot of truth to that. That, like, even in the middle of winter, you can just wear a thicker hoodie. In the middle of summer, you wear a really thin hoodie, and it comes off really quickly. But there's always kind of a, well, let's see what today holds when you wake up in the morning. Keeps you on your toes, which I suppose is not a bad thing. Definitely getting deer sort of vibes here. So we'll see what happens. Let's see what I can sculpt out with the space that is allotted to me here. I was just talking to a friend of mine a night or two ago and had the odd realization that the school year is quickly coming to a close. This is the first year in quite a long time that I haven't been actively teaching in the school system. And so to learn and have that realization that, oh my goodness, like a school year is almost past, feels so strange and so weird. To be detached from it, and yet it keeps moving. It feels like it moves much faster when you're not attached to it, at least to me. Feels odd that the school year is already coming to a close. Feels very strange. And yet I'm sure if I was in it right now, I'd be thinking, oh my goodness, this needs to be over sooner. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it last for the next 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however much longer there is. Things just keep moving. And if you're aware of them, they move, or they seem to move faster. They don't actually move any faster, but if you're aware of them, they seem to move faster. A lot of interesting things have happened in the last couple of years with that. I'm trying desperately to slow down, to be more present, and to be more aware of each passing day and how it functions and where I fit into it and what lovely things there are to be thankful for. I'm not a very thankful person by nature, I would say. I think that most of my beneficial traits that way are learned. Unfortunately, I have a spouse who is very thankful and has a high level of gratitude for the world and things that are happening in it, and that's really beneficial to me. I benefit significantly from her optimism and her hope about the future and how things are probably going to look. I can be a nasty kind of pessimist and just assume everything's gonna fall apart, and I'm just learned enough to be able to quote historians and philosophers and all these things that are useful sometimes, but really at the end of the day don't affect your day-to-day life. And so it's really nice to have somebody who's more grounded in reality as part of the backbone of my just daily existence. Not sure about this eye. This eye is a little odd. I think I built it incorrectly. I was trying to think about how herbivore eyes function from the front. Kind of thinking a lot of the stuff that I've made lately has been a little creepy, and it's like, well, how do I make something a little less creepy? And this is still creepy. So that purpose at least is not achieved so far. Maybe I should study some cuter things for a little while and try to make things that aren't always so awkward and creepy. Maybe not. I kind of enjoy the creepy things, not because they're creepy, but because there's lower stress usually in creating things that are just, I think, going to fall into that category. For me, creating more organic things, more organic shapes, things that are rough around the edges, like all of this. Move this up a little bit. It's less stressful to create because there's fewer really defined edges, and so if something looks a little off, it might just be a part of like what was intended, or it might not be intended at all, but it might actually contribute to making it look more distinct and more interesting. Just realized I was giving it a decent amount of this like furry texture as I was sculpting out the other pieces, and then this face didn't have any. It looked way too smooth compared to everything else that I've got going. This is really interesting that it ended up having like the body structure pieces just built into the random lines that I had constructed. Sometimes when you do this, though, you'll find that you made things based on all these shapes that you saw unconsciously. And that can be a really intriguing thing, to just let your unconscious mind go, and often it doesn't let you down. I find pen is also a beneficial tool for that, because pen has no recovery if you mess up with it. Sometimes your brain just lets you do better things. You do things that are more detailed, that function a little bit better, because your brain kind of consciously or unconsciously knows that there's no going back. So I love working from pen, or working with pen, for that reason, because it's less forgiving. And that might seem, odd, and I hope it doesn't seem pretentious at all, because it really isn't. It's just a matter of, subconsciously, somewhere in my brain, I know that like if I mess up with a pen, like it's all over. And so I'm a little bit more meticulous, I think, about where I put my marks. I say as I sculpt out this weird like Dr. Seussian deer thing. I'm trying to think about how this, like, obviously that's not how that leg would work, but trying to think about how this back leg would work. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. We're going to go kind of like this. I don't have as many lines to work from over in this spot. So I might let some of these marks over here dry and then come back to it in a little bit and work some more brush pen over it. Brush pens have been so much fun. When I was a kid, I loved animals. And I haven't really grown out of that. I think that most kids do. Most kids love animals, and they just have this fascination. I heard not that long ago an adult who was asked what their favorite animal was, and they scoffed and they said, well, I haven't had a favorite animal since I was 8, when it was, appropriate to have a favorite animal. And I hope that that's not how most people think. That would be so sad if that's how most people think. Because having favorites, random things in your life that you like more than other things, they're just entertaining and they're fun. And what's the problem with having a favorite animal when you're 40 or 50 years old? It doesn't need to be something weird like that's my spirit animal. If that is what it is for you, like, great, but it doesn't have to be strange like that. It can just be, oh, this is just an animal that I really like, that I really I'm entertained by. It brings me joy when I see it. It doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe that's part of the problem, and part of what you see in so many movies and stories about growing up, things like Peter Pan, is obviously it's a good thing to grow up. It's a good thing to become an adult. You become the full-fledged version of what you're supposed to be. You grow up. But we have this condescending tone to growing up. And I think that it's probably just linked to the fact that when we grow up, we inevitably lose pieces of our childhood. We lose pieces of what made us distinct individuals when we were young. And there is a sadness in that. And I think that, at least here in the United States, we're starting to come to an understanding that you have to be somewhere in the middle. Like, as you get older, you don't have to lose your childhood. You also do need to grow up in some capacity. You know, the big wide world is going to come knocking, and you're going to have some new responsibilities, and you're going to have some things that have to take place. And that's kind of inevitable. But that doesn't mean that you need to give up on all of the things that you enjoyed as a kid. Those pieces of you that were distinctly you in middle school, in high school, in elementary school, there's no reason to reject those as you get older. It's not a one or the other situation, I don't think. You don't have to choose between being the kid who lives in your parents' basement at 40 years old or being the adult who at 18 rejects all of their things from their childhood and moves forward into a business. It's not quite that simple. You can find a happy medium there. I don't think most people do, because it's hard. It's hard to find balance. But I think it's a very, very worthwhile endeavor. I think seeking balance is a really beneficial thing. The older generation seems like it always gives the younger generation a hard time. That is, as far as I can tell, nothing new, and that is simply part of humanity. That we, as the older folk, we always give the younger folk a hard time. I say we, inadvertently putting myself in that group too. I don't know that we is terribly appropriate, because I have a tendency to be, as you might have gathered from any of my other sketching sessions, overly analytical. And so I have a tendency to think about these things, and in so doing, I often don't subscribe to exactly what my generation or the people who are my contemporaries do. I'm not special. Like, I don't exist outside of them. I don't do nothing that is in line with what my generation does. I have always had this little bit of feeling that I was born I was born into a generation that is a little bit too newfangled for me. I very much feel like I probably am an old soul stuck in a young body. And my mom has said that, and people in my life have said that for most of my existence. And I don't know that that makes it more true or less true. But it's just kind of a feeling of how I've processed my existence. And so I think that the old generation often gives the younger generation a hard time. That seems to be the way that it's happened as far back as I can see. And that might not be a good thing, but there's also something that happens when you're hassled by those who are older than you. When you are dedicated to something and someone points it out and gives you a hard time for it, I think you've only really got two ways of responding. You can kind of be embarrassed and change your action, or you can double down on it and go, no, I like this thing and I'm going to keep doing this thing, and I don't really care what your opinion is. And that was certainly me as a kid. I was the one that, people would point out things about how I did my hair, or the clothes that I wore, or the music I listened to, and I really didn't care what their opinions were. I was dedicated to what I was dedicated to, and this is what I was going to do. And there was pieces of that I look back on, I'm like, yeah, good job. And there's pieces of that I look back on, I'm like, yeah, you probably should have thought a little bit more thoroughly about that, because your uncle probably had a point. But when you're a kid, you don't know, and you're trying to figure out who you are, and more importantly, who you want to be. And I think that when the older people in your life are hard on you, and assuming they're not being abusive, right? But assuming that they're just like most dads or moms will be, where it's like, why are you wearing earrings like that? Why are you wearing a shirt that says that? Why are you listening to this music with the loud drums and the screaming? And, assuming it's not constructive, I guess, but assuming that it's not abusive, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that it forces you as a kid, as a young adult, to go, why am I listening to this? Why am I doing this thing? And sometimes the answer is as simple as, well, I want to. And there are times where that is a 100% justifiable answer. And there are times where you will probably sit there and go, you know what? I don't know. I had this friend named Mark, and he wore wristbands, and so I guess I'm wearing wristbands now, and I don't really know what their purpose is, and maybe they're silly. And I think that it's beneficial to sit there and analyze every once in a while why you do what you do, and then decide if you want to stick with it or not. When your parents give you a hard time for watching anime, and, then you have a moment to sit there and go, well, do I really like it? Is that why I'm watching it? Am I watching it because it's countercultural? Am I watching it and enjoying it because my friends do? And I don't think any of those reasons are bad. I think that the reason that could be bad is if you don't really have a reason and you're just doing it because you've always done it, or you're doing it to look a certain way. I don't think those are good reasons, but I think that if you really just like a thing and that's why you're doing a thing, that go ahead. The more libertarian aspect of that is, as long as you're not messing with anybody else, just do your thing. In a lot of ways, there's some good benefit to that. What is this thing? What is this thing? I have no idea what I'm making here. Oh well. Oh well. I know a lot of people have had issues with their parents or their art teachers or other people in their life and their love or affection for anime. And I go back in my brain and try to find if I have a similar thing. But I don't think I did. Not from my parents at all, because my dad always kind of liked animated things. He was big on video games, and he took my mom to an arcade on one of their first dates, and this would have been back in the 70s. So my dad is a big nerd when it comes to video games and things like that. So he was never opposed to animation, or had these ideas about what, where they fit into like the real world or something silly like that. But I remember one of the first pseudo anime type of things was Princess Mononoke. And for me, Princess Mononoke was beautiful and wonderful and just this really cool thing to see. But my dad brought that VHS home for us to watch. That was something that he watched with me and he enjoyed. And so my parents, were never really opposed to those things. My mom was a very sensible human being. And in my punk rock days and my video game days and my, anime watching days and my artist days and all these different phases that I went through that ended up coalescing into the person I am today, she didn't fight anything that didn't really matter. So my mother only really opposed, okay, you did this and it was dishonest. Or, we got your curfew and you came home an hour after curfew and didn't have the decency to let us know. My mom didn't oppose any of the silly things. She didn't care. She wanted to focus on who I was as a human being. And that was where her energy was going. And I think that as a parent now, for me, That's that's a similar way that I'm looking at things. Like, I don't really care what my daughter does as far as if she becomes an artist or a musician or a writer or a scientist. Like, I want her to pursue something that is going to be a good mix of her skills, her talent, her strengths, and is going to bring her joy, and also probably, make her some quantity of money. Granted, like, she's almost 4, so these are not conversations I have to have with her yet. But I am thinking as a father, as somebody who's taught for ages and worked with tons of families and kids over the years, I'm trying to learn from all those pieces and all those things and be like, what kind of dad do I want to be? And I don't want to force her into being any kind of person. I just want to be supportive enough for her to find her way. And I also don't want to be the kind of parent that when their kid asks for their opinion is scared to give the opinion because they don't want to influence the kid. I don't think that's great either. I think that if your kid asks for your opinion about what they ought to do with their life or profession or what musical instrument they should play or anything, I think that if your kid asks, it's beneficial to respond and to probably do so in a pretty tempered manner, but to honor their request, to honor their question. I have some friends that I've heard of that their parents refuse to give them any input on their degrees, on what they should do for school, on what they should do for careers, and then years later have told them, oh, I never thought that was a good idea. It's like, well, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? So yeah, I think it's a bad idea to push your own agenda on your kid. I think it's a bad idea to not share your opinions with your kid. But you gotta be smart about it. You gotta keep in mind that they're a little human being. They look up to you. Your opinion has more weight than a lot of other things. And so temper that. My daughter right now wants to play guitar because I play guitar, and she has her own little easel set up in this room because daddy's an artist. And that is heartwarming to me. But I also am aware that might just be because she's 3.5. And I have no expectations that she will be an artist. I have no expectations that she'll be a musician. I do expect her to play an instrument because she shows a lot of aptitude and she gets a lot of joy out of it. But I also am not sitting here trying to dictate I think we should get her to play violin. Right now, our thought on that is just simply, let's get her some piano lessons in a year or two, because that's just a great place to start for anyone for an instrument. And then, just let her tinker and let her play. She's already got a little guitar that she got for Christmas. She's got a couple very old keyboards, 20, 30-year-old keyboards. And she just tinkers on them and she plays things. And right now, she pretty much plays Twinkle Twinkle. And that's great. Sometimes she finishes her little performance. She's like, Daddy, clap. And so, I smile and I clap, and that's what I've got. That's my job right now when it comes to her musical adventures. I know that some parents push their kids to play violin in Suzuki programs and things like that at 3. And I'm not condemning that. I don't pretend to have the knowledge of what all parents should do. But I can't imagine doing it. I can't imagine, A, trying to get a 3-year-old to practice an instrument regularly. B, I just can't imagine that fight. I don't think that would be good for our relationship. And I don't have an interest in it. Am I going to regret it later? I don't think so. I don't think I am going to regret not forcing her to play an instrument at 3. I have some people in my life that is them. They started playing, when they were very, very, very young, and now, in their adult life, they are very skilled. But that is not how I'm going to parent. Not how I'm going to parent. And maybe she'll yell at me when she's older. Dad, you should have forced me into something. But I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. that kid is going to grow up loving her freedom. If I've got any perspective on what she's going to be like. This kind of drawing is a little bit like raising something, a kid, an animal, a plant, in that you never really know what things are going to do. And I'm sure for some people that's more stressful. It might be really odd for them to try to put together a piece and just have no idea where things are going to go, what the intent is. I think that if you're that kind of person, this kind of drawing might be even better for you, though. I think that sometimes getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that are a little bit out of the ordinary for you can be really beneficial. You can get some really interesting results. You can accomplish some things that you wouldn't normally have accomplished. I think that it can be really beneficial. It can also be really stress-inducing if you're the kind of person who's really prone to have high and heavy expectations for yourself. Maybe that's one more reason to do it, though. Because dismantling your expectations, learning to understand your expectations, I think there's a lot that can be gained from that avenue, from that... What's the word I'm looking for? From putting your time and energy into that pursuit, to understand yourself. The more you know yourself, the more you can anticipate your whims, you can anticipate your expectations, you can understand where you might be disappointed, where you might be excited, and you can work on those things and hone them and, I guess, just work towards homeostasis. I'm not sure what to do with these pieces, these things that are coming down over here. They kind of look like these weird tree branch antlery things, but the head wouldn't be large enough to hold all of them. So I'm not sure. Maybe they're just branches coming down off the trees. Guess I'll just start drawing on them and see if something turns out. I think that's kind of the way I'm going to go, though, is I'm probably just going to make them more branches. I think I need to practice how to get leaves onto branches, because as I'm drawing these, I'm like, hey, like this would make a lot of sense, especially with some of the green pieces, to have there be leaves on these, but I'm not 100% sure how I would go about that. I think I might do a couple art sessions in the upcoming weeks that are studies as opposed to this, which is just a sketchbook session, just me drawing for the fun of it. Might do some where I specifically am talking about and working through like how to draw leaves on branches, how to draw cats, how to draw, and not really instructive lessons as much as just I'm going to sit here for an hour and a half or two and just draw cats and then talk about why things are working out the way they are. And that might be beneficial. It might be beneficial to just hear somebody else and their mental process as they work through how to do a thing. there was a time in the last couple months where the AI art stuff was big. And I was hearing about it all the time, and I was seeing videos about it all the time. I even made 2 videos about it on my channel. And then it feels like it kind of went dormant. And then recently, in the last week or two, I've seen a resurgence of some of the AI stuff. I'm not sure if there's been some changes that have actually taken place, if it's just reoccurring to people, but I'm curious what that's about. I'm curious to see where everything's going to go with it too. Because I went through these stages of being afraid of it, because for the first time in my life, I'm dedicating myself much more heavily to my artistic pursuits, and then all of a sudden this AI thing comes out, and I could totally understand why some people feel like it's hopeless now. Why should I even try to keep drawing? Why should I learn to draw if this AI thing is gonna just erase those jobs, erase the need for it? Why should I even care? And there's a sensibility to that. I think that's not a totally illogical position to take. I think it's a terrible position to take, not in like a condescending way, but I just think it's a sad, terrible as in like a bad thing, a sad situation that we find ourselves. Art brings so much joy that I think that it's going to have a place regardless of if, well, I can't really talk to the professional realm. It's not what I do. I think that if you have some fear about going into the industry and what AI art's gonna do, then look into that and make sure that that fear is either rational or it's not rational, and you understand that. Ooh, there's nothing like getting a brand new tip on one of these. I don't think it's dumb to investigate. I think it's a really intelligent and smart idea to investigate and just try to figure out, what do I think? What do professionals think? I was certainly, when I first saw it, I was apprehensive. I didn't know really what to think. And then I was kind of excited because I was like, oh, this might be a really cool tool that I can use to conjure images and to like form some ideas that are too hard for me to do right now. And so I messed around with it for a couple weeks. And then, inevitably I did some more research on it and realized that like, oh, this is maybe scary. And then my kind of initial excitement turned to apprehension, which turned to fear. And I think I did have a couple days where I was like, man, like, did I just pick the worst time ever in human history to try to work on my art? And so I think I had like a couple days or a week or so where it's just like, man, I don't want to create anything. Like, I'm so sad about this. And as I've talked about before, like, I can only go for a very short amount of time without creating things before my brain just starts slowly breaking and I get moody and like I just need to make things to survive. And so obviously I got back into it and I started thinking more and processing, almost like the stages of grief, processing like, oh my goodness, did I make a bad call? Like, what's going on here? And a couple very, like, these are not ubiquitous things. These are just personal to me things that I've come to as far as conclusions go. One, like, I need to create for me. So even if AI is going to take over in a sense that it's going to be the primary art medium of the world in a couple years, like, I still need to make things. So, like, doesn't matter. I still have to do it. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep making things. Another is that I value watching the art processes of other individuals. And that's not something I think that AI is going to be able to do for a very long time. And even if it could do it proficiently, I don't think I'd care. I don't think I'd be interested, because I'd know, this isn't a person that's doing this, and so it's just not as interesting to me. And as far as purchasing art and enjoying actual artists, like I have buddies and friends who are professional painters, and I will continue to support them as I can over the years. And I wouldn't be willing to spend much money on AI stuff, even if it was really, really good. I just don't think I would be willing to spend that much money on it. So, and I don't know if those are going to be opinions that are held by other people. But for me, I need to create, so I'll create. End of story. If I can find a way to make money doing it and make a living doing it, great. But at the end of the day, I have to create to stay sane, and so I will. But I understand the fear. I understand the trepidation. I still have moments, even though I've thought about it a lot. I've written 2 scripts about it. I've talked to a lot of friends about it. I've researched it a lot. I still have moments where I feel very trepidatious or wonder if I'm banging my head against a wall. I don't have much of a choice. I gotta make things. I gotta make things or I go nuts. So, here we are, drawing a weird deer thing that might be slightly reminiscent of the forest spirit from Princess Mononoke, which I already mentioned earlier. That might be why that popped up in my brain, is because of this guy, or vice versa. Who knows? Who knows what happens first? Where these triggers come from. Yeah, these pens are dual-sided, but I kind of think it's funny because the pen tip is so fine that even though now I'm working from the small tip, like I can get marks this fine pretty easily on the other side too. So it's almost like didn't need to be dual-sided. Those turquoise marks did not look turquoise when I put them down. They looked blue. Relative color. What a strange thing. It can make things look so different as you start to put other things down. The paper's starting to warp up a teeny bit. That's why I stopped there. So I need to go work on a different section of it for a few minutes so that can dry thoroughly. Then I can come back. I do want to get something in that eye, though. This might be a terrible decision. No, it's not bad. Just kind of a little bit of pink in that eye. I'll probably use a white pen to pull some of it back out later on. So let's kind of keep going and see. This leg's coming forward, so I think I'm either going to go this leg this way or this back leg that way. I don't want to do it right now, so I'm going to come over here and work on some other things and figure out what's kind of happening here. Too low. Let's move this up. We're going to come work down here for a few minutes. Yeah, my eye is twitching today. Get these weird muscle reverberations where for a 24-hour period or so, I'll just have something some muscle that'll twitch. It's really annoying. No idea why it happens. It's been happening for a very, very long time. Too low again. Keep spreading out all over the place. This one, this whole page might end up being just a single image, which would be cool. I haven't done that much with my sketchbooks recently, but it would be a lot of fun if I can manage to do that, if I can manage to get it to be just a succinct thing. So we'll see. I'm kind of excited about that potentiality. Been working a lot with trees, haven't I? So afraid to do the tops of the trees, though, so I keep just doing mostly branches and roots. On my own personal time for my studying recently, specifically digitally, I've been working on trying to figure out how to draw trees and how to paint trees. They're complicated, to me at least. Whereas most things, I feel if I can look at a reference, if I can copy it, I'm going to be able to get reasonably close to the result. I feel like trees and clouds and rock and stone, ice, they just feel hard to me regardless. Even if I've got a nice reference in front of me, even if I'm working from life, they feel so difficult to me. And the more I've been processing it, the more I'm thinking that, like, there's something similar in all of them. Some similar quality that makes them feel that way in my brain. Looks like an egg. These look like medallions that are just floating around here. I don't like that eye now. I'm looking at the eye up on the guy that I was shading earlier. I don't like it. Might change it, might not. Might just be what it is. Oh, which way would this go? I think this would be more gradual and it would get larger as it's coming towards us. This is really weird. I wonder what's going on here. Do you ever work on a drawing or a painting and you're like, as you're working through something, you're like, I wonder what this is going to be because I don't know. Right now, that's kind of how I feel. That it's like, I don't really know what's going to happen with a lot of this stuff. So I guess we'll just see what comes of it. Get in some darker tones in that eye. Not because it's a good idea, but because I don't know what else to do with it. I think for the time being, I'm just going to cover in a bunch of more of this guy's fur and flesh. And then I'll work toward figuring out some of the other components in a little while. You may be noticing that I don't have a tendency to work on one thing and finish it. I bounce back and forth all over the place. And that's pretty much how I work. It drives some people nuts. I hope it doesn't drive you guys nuts. But it's just how I work and how I process. I get really bored if I work on the same part of something for an exceptionally long amount of time. It's to the point where I don't even like doing the dishes right after I clean. Or, sorry, I don't like doing the dishes right after I finish cooking because it feels like too much time on the same thing. I'll even start putting dishes away and put a couple dishes away, and then I'll wash a couple, and then I'll load a couple, and just bounce back and forth. I don't usually have a problem finishing the task, but I just don't do it in a very normal order. My attention just does much, much better if I'm able to bounce back and forth on things. Artists are sometimes a little odd when it comes to focus. We have this ability to focus so intensely on things for long periods of time, and then also like we struggle to focus in like a normal class, and that's why we doodle and sketch and things. I found throughout college and high school that I do much, much, much better if I'm able to draw or take notes or do something tactile. And so that's what I do. Anytime that I'm doing something where I need to really be getting a lot of information out of it, I just try to take notes. And I don't even have to look back at the notes most of the time. Just the fact that I took them, it's like my brain remembers it better and catalogs it better. I am not advocating that you all do the same thing. This is just pieces of me that I've learned how I operate and how I need to operate. But I have a feeling that some of you are similar. I have a feeling that some of you are also those strange art kids who struggle to focus and who doodle in their sketchbooks or on their notes in class and have probably gotten yelled at for it before, but then you just do it in a more clandestine way because you don't know how to focus otherwise. I have a feeling that that is a lot of this audience. Call it a hunch. Chrome orange, what a weird name for a color. I don't want to flippantly toss around things like ADD or ADHD because I think being flippant with stuff like that is not generally a good thing. But there is certainly a correlation between that trait and what I'm describing. I've never been diagnosed with anything like that. But having worked in education and having worked with lots of students who were diagnosed with things like ADD or ADHD in some capacity, whatever capacity their therapists and doctors did, you do see some similarities between the stereotypical art kid. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We're all different humans. We process differently. We understand differently. We have different levels of attention, different things we can maintain our attention on. This is just how humanity functions. For me, I got yelled at a lot when I was a kid for shifting too much in class, for moving around, for talking to the kids next to me, for drawing on my notes, for getting up out of my chair sometimes. And I learned over time that I just have to move or I can't pay attention. And so even today, as an adult in my mid-30s, I can't sit through really anything longer than about 10 minutes without moving in some capacity. When I taught, this meant that I just walked around my classroom all the time. When I was in meetings, this meant that I would usually stand in the back of the meeting and would pace, and I could pay really good attention doing that. It means that working out is hard for me because I get so bored and focus too heavily on what I'm doing. So what I've started doing is I'll watch videos that are complicated enough that they require attention while I'm exercising, and then I can maintain my focus much, much, much better. And I actually moved a TV into the workout room. We're fortunate enough to have a space in our basement to work out. And I moved a TV in there, and so now I play my Nintendo Switch while I'm working out, which is the best thing. Because I would always rather be playing video games than working out. So why not do both simultaneously? I don't particularly enjoy exercise. I do it because I need to do it. I do it because I want to be able to chase my kid and not run out of breath. And that's pretty much it. Like, there's almost no vanity in it. I don't really care about being buff or, I don't really want to be like, I don't want to have a huge belly, personally. But for me, most of it's just about the practicality of I want to be able to move, and I want to be able to do physical things, and I want to be able to run. And if I can't do those things, then I'm not going to be able to keep up with my kid because she's so active. So that's pretty much why I exercise. Oh, and like I don't want to get older and then be unhealthy. It's so easy to get into your 40s or 50s and just not be in a particularly healthy spot and have a lot to work through to get back to being healthy. And so I figure if I keep a decent eye on what I eat, a decent eye on my physical activity levels, then the chance of anything getting out of control is much, much, much smaller. I started a lot of this like more health-focused stuff when I had a kid. I didn't want to have a lot of our like family funds go to my dental care or to my health care. I'd rather them go to fun things. I'd rather them be resources for my daughter. So that's where a lot of that stuff has come from. When I was young, I didn't care at all. Speaking of wandering brain, I have no idea how the conversation got here. No idea. I don't remember at all. Man, I love these pen brushes. These things are so much fun. One of those mediums. Even though that's not probably correct, but it feels better. That I wonder, where have you been all my life? Because I would have loved you in high school. If you have not given them a try, I would highly recommend it. Not crazy expensive. I wonder what the crazy expensive ones feel like, because there probably is a high-end brand, as there is with pretty much everything. I wonder what the difference would be. I wonder how epic it could be. I'm not sure this white pen is working. Yeah, that one doesn't seem like it's working too well. Let's try the other. There we go. Well, that looks way creepier. Awesome. Not at all what I was going for. Oh well. Yeah, it's blurring things right now. Weird. Weird. Wonder if it might just not be dried enough. To let things dry a little bit more before I can do it. Let's see if I can work over this area, because I did that a long time ago. Yeah, that seems like that's what the problem is just not dry enough yet. So yeah, adding that white into the eye now makes it just look like it has cataracts. Wonderful. Well, it is what it is. Maybe we'll work on it later, maybe not. Just a little sketch. Doesn't matter that much. Doesn't matter. Nothing matters. I'm not sure, but Sometimes when something doesn't work out artistically, you're like, is the world gonna end? I don't know. It might. This might be it. This might be the end. This might be how we all go. This one drawing didn't work out. We're done. Be a sad way to go. So I've shaded him in. I'm gonna do the branches blue because that makes 0 sense. And that's literally all the thought I'm gonna give it. I'm just gonna go and see what happens. Again, this might be that turquoise color. It's called light blue on the pen itself, but it definitely looks like turquoise. I wonder if that's just the relative color, because everything on here is... No, it's not the same color I used earlier, is it? No, the color I used earlier was mint, which makes sense that mint would be potentially a little bit more that way. We're going back to the mint. We're just going to double down on these turquoise colors. We're going to at least layer them in where they could look vaguely glowy, and then I can always come back with darker blues and add in some shading on these things. Not going to be a problem. This will also hopefully distinguish them from these other branches. If I do the other branches in more traditional kind of browns, then that will distinguish it from this guy. I don't think there's any way I'm finishing this in this sketchbook session, so I think that the next one I do, I will keep going on this page, and I will try to finish this page out. Don't feel like, to those couple of you that are watching this far in, don't feel like it would be that fair to keep jumping every single time. I've jumped most times. I think I've done a different sketchbook each time. But I've also, at least to my recollection in this moment, I think I finished each of the pieces. Finished to some capacity. This is going to be a way too bright a green, but I just kind of want to get something on here for these leaves. It's probably going to be some really dark greens for the background, so I'm just going to start laying in some of these light tones. Just so they're there. This is one of the lighter greens I use, so I'll just create a lot of layers. This is an older pen. I can tell the brush tip is much less fine. I think I used this one on the gigantic piece that I was doing for weeks. That will start showing up in the podcasts, in the background of the podcasts. But that piece had tons of greens and grasses in it. And so I was really impressed. It was a large piece, and it still didn't destroy these pen brushes. I've been really impressed with them. I think the initial set I got might have been like $20, and I think it was for a 48 set. Could be remembering that wrong, but that sounds correct to me. And this new set I got is, I think, $40 or $48, and it's 96. And it's been fantastic. I've loved it. Really been enjoying it. Just realized I'm off the screen here. I'm going down and doing these things. Sorry about that. With that faux pas, I think it's a good time to call it. Not because of that, but that just seems like a decent place to stop. We'll come back. We'll work on finishing up this page, darkening in the background, figuring out what the heck's going down on this lower portion. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. And please share in the comments below what you were working on while you were drawing, or any comments on any of the random points I threw out throughout this process. Love to hear from you. If you're enjoying these, please feel free to subscribe. No pressure. But if you're enjoying them, then it just can't hurt to be notified when they're going live. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good one, y'all. See you soon.